The 61-year-old Prince Feisal Al-Hussein of Jordan is the president of the Jordan Olympic Committee and a member of the IOC Executive Board. As a former wrestler, he later held several high-ranking positions in the Jordanian Royal Army, having distinguished himself as an aviation expert and a helicopter pilot. His program emphasizes maximizing revenue and collaborating with the esports industry, but perhaps even more importantly, he's committed to ensuring the protection of athletes from both mental and physical challenges. Your Highness, Prince Feisal, thank you so much for accepting our invitation for this interview. I'm really grateful for that, because I think it's very important to see different kind of perspectives when we're talking about the International Olympic Committee's future. And now we are actually here in Frankfurt on the General Assembly of the European Olympic Committee. And you probably have a chance to sort of feel the weight of a continent within the movement. What do you think about Asia's weight as we look at it from that perspective?
I think Asia is, population-wise, it's the largest continent that exists. And when you look at it from a youth perspective, it's actually one of the youngest. We have a very large youth population. I think over 60% of the people are under the age of 30. Some people even think under the age of 25. So I think when we look at the Olympic movement and the opportunity it has to inspire the imagination of youth around the world, I think it's important that we look at the continents and see what we can do to work with the youth. They are our future, after all.
And this is one of the biggest challenge for the IOC, which is a traditional organization that has been changing the face of it with inventing some new sports as well. Some of them are more or less successful, I would say, with the experience of the Paris Olympics. But do you think that's the way to sort of reach out to this generation, to facelift basically the sports that are participating in the program?
I think the flexibility in looking at the sports that have been introduced from Tokyo onwards is an opportunity to reach out to the youth of the world in sports that they find more relevant. It's closer to home for them. That is easier for them to be able to practice or to participate. So I think it is a good tool for that. Is it the only tool? No. I mean, the Olympic movement is now looking also at esports as a potential. Again, why? Because a lot of the youth occupy that space. Is it going to encourage people to play sports? I think there is an opportunity there. But it's reaching an audience that traditionally we haven't been able to tap into. Right. And I think the importance in looking at these sports series is that we want to get the Olympic values. At the end of the day, we are a value-based organization that believes very strongly in what we do for all the benefits that we can do and provide for the world. Whether it's looking at health, whether it's looking at environment, whether look at it's the unity, even the building that sense of hope. Mm-hmm. In a world that when you look at all the conflicts that exists, hope is a key element. And we saw it in Paris. All 206 Olympic committees were there, including the Olympic refugees. And we saw a refugee athlete get the first medal ever. That's historical. That for 120 million displaced people, that gives them hope. That gives them the opportunity. So sports can be a very, very powerful tool. And we need to be able to tap into that.
Yeah, but you also have to find the right balance, because you have been mentioning esports, which is which is a quite interesting way to include that generation who is really involved with, this kind of new communicational way. I have 2 sons, so I know what a big fight, a parent would do to sort of keep them in reality instead of virtuality. But on the other hand, let me recall a personal memory from 2019. That was in Lausanne at the AIPS Congress, which is the International Sports Press Association. Mr. Thomas Bach, the president, also back then, was our guest. And we were asking him about esports. And you know what his answer was? He said, as long as you don't find Csisztu, Alcius, Forcius within esport, I don't think esport has a place in the Olympic movement. That was only 6 years ago. So things are changing really quickly. So you can see, that the reaction and the reaction time, of course, has to speed up in some way. So my question is that how can you balance well, digitality and esport and that kind of way of less active way of life compared to what we are talking about from the traditional, sports perspective?
I think we need to look at finding a good balance between the two. There is an opportunity in esports, for instance, to try and promote Olympic values. Being that we are a value-based organization, I think there's an opportunity to reach children and let them understand the power of sports. Will it encourage a large percentage of them to put down the controller and go out and play?
To be physical? I mean, that's a major question.
I think you will find it will probably have a positive impact on a number of them, what that number is. But I think we need to make the effort. We can't sit there and just say, well, they're never going to be interested, so we're just going to ignore them. The youth are looking for things to believe in, looking for things that they feel that makes them belong. And I think sports is a great tool for that. And so opening their eyes to the potential of what real sports can do is important. If you look at all the elite esports teams, they actually have psychologists working with them. They have trainers that are working for them. Part of that is physical fitness because it helps you in the reaction time. It helps you be able to go.
That you have to be physically ready.
So there is an element of that already exists. And the professional teams all respect that and actually make physical fitness as part of their training. So I think there is an opportunity to reach an audience that we haven't been able to reach. And at the end of the day, if we don't try, we will never know. And I think let's give it a shot. We haven't yet seen the series. We don't know what the impact is going to be. But this could be a great opportunity. And why would we want to miss out on being able to reach the youth of the world?
And to be honest, from the business perspective, from the money involved into it, that's also something that has to be taken into consideration.
I think the challenge is that to prepare, and I think this is why they originally thought that they can do it in 2025. They've since realized that it's very ambitious. They need to think about and structure it properly. But for NOCs around the world, they need to know what is their role, what is the process that they can support their national federations, what is the process of being able to enter what type of teams, what type of games, so that they know how to get a team to actually participate. That is still unclear.
Yeah, that's the future to
And so if we don't have a path for qualification that's clearly laid out, how can NOCs properly respond? And I think that's part of the challenge. And I think I'll take it a step further. We've added Youth Olympic Games. You've got Continental Games, a lot of other games associated either at the continental level or at the global level that require NOC support. But in reality, the NOCs are not getting additional funding to help them cope. So we're asking more and more from NOCs in developing capacity, in developing capabilities.
But without actually providing the funds for that.
Without necessarily some of it is funds, some of it is support. How can I develop capacity if I don't help NOCs to be able to achieve that? And that's something that I hope to be able to address.
You've mentioned displaced people and very unfortunate conflicts all over the world, and I think this is one of the biggest challenge of the upcoming new president. There was a very turbulent era that we had to face in the last couple of years with the Russian-Ukrainian conflict, with of course the Israel-Palestine conflicts and many others, because of course they're also maybe not in the front line of the news, but they're still there, unfortunately. And exactly because of that, there are so many. It was criticized, you know, the role of Russia and the Belarusian athletes just experience a kind of discrimination that is not really aligned with the values of IOC, especially with the Olympic Charter. So I think this is one of the biggest challenges to be solved in the future. Not the question of Russia, not just the question of those athletes, how to include or involve them again into the Olympic movement, but how to be able to have, you know, the global politics kept out from the field of play, because I think sometimes it was involved too much.
I would say with the issue of Russia, right now, my understanding is that Russia is in violation of the Olympic Charter. And for that reason, it has faced sanctions. In an ideal world, the Olympic movement embraces everybody, embraces all nations, all 206.
That was the original idea.
Yes. But if there are nations that are not going to honor the Olympic Charter or violate the Olympic Charter, then they should, in my belief, and as president, my responsibility is to protect the Olympic Charter. Then I think anybody who violates that should be able to face sanctions, and there is a repercussion for it. Ideally, I would like to find a way for them to come back into the fold, because we should represent the world. But at the same point in time, we need to do it in a way where the Olympic Charter is respected. And I think that's where the challenge is. Can the Olympic world solve all the world's crises? No. I think that would be very naive to think that.
Yes, it's not the purpose, it's not the goal to do.
And some people sit there and say, well, we've got to keep politics out. And my answer to that is, politics is part of human beings. You have family politics, you've got office politics, you've got local politics, and you've got the global politics. So to be able to sit and say politics is going to be out, I think is a naive approach. What we need to do is try and keep international politics out of what our primary role is, and that is to support sports. And to be able to navigate the very turbulent times that we're facing, right? You know, you've talked about a couple of years. I think we're still in that turbulent time. And it's going to take years for us to get out of that. Absolutely. So we have that stability. That's what we're all hoping to see. So you've got to be able to navigate a very challenging environment, but we can't ignore what's going on in the world.
That's for sure.
I call for the Olympic movement to be more compassionate. Mm-hmm. And I think that's an important element that we should embrace in how we look at and do things in the Olympic movement.
And besides to be compassionate, also to sort of try to place yourself into the athlete's perspective, because if I may, I can share you with it. I would say I'm one of the victims of the global politics from 1984. coming from Hungary and being a part of the socialist countries, because of the political boycott, I could not participate in an Olympics. So if I look at it from the athlete's perspective, to be a victim of, of politicians' decision, I think this is something that can ruin your whole career for a lifetime. So that shouldn't be happening.
I totally agree. We shouldn't allow necessarily politics to dictate the future. But at the same point in time, we have to be realistic to understand that this is the challenge that we face. It's when you look at it from an athlete perspective, an athlete has prepared all his or her life for that one opportunity. And in certain sports, the lifespan is very limited.
Exactly. It's one as a lifetime
and
chance.
So to deny them because of politics, I think, is a tragedy, and we'd like to avoid that. The Olympic movement is about inclusion, it's not about exclusion. And that should be, I think, an underlying principle that we work with. And I think there is so much that can be done to help alleviate it and to try and convince it. But I'll give you two examples. I recently read a report that after London 2012 and the success that they had there are actually 7,000 less PE teachers in the UK than existed in 2017. We've seen a situation in France. After a very successful Paris Olympic Games, the sporting budget got cut by 30%. So the challenge I think we have as an Olympic movement is to re-put sports as being an integral part of national development and to allow countries, to allow governments to realize the real value and the potential that sports can do to support them.
And shouldn't be exploited just for the Olympic Games, right?
No, it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
But I think it's a question of principles. It's a question of values.
Exactly.
And your values don't change with the wind, or shouldn't change with your wind. It's something that we believe in, and it's something we'd like to work on. We need to continue to support it. And sports can do so much good. I mean, I have a foundation, Generations for Peace, and we work in conflict communities, bringing people together and rebuilding a community, in giving them hope, giving them a joint future. And we work in 52 countries in 4 continents. And I've seen how sports can transform people's lives.
Absolutely.
And I think this is something that we should celebrate, and we should encourage governments and people to support. Because it can make such a difference.
Absolutely. Sport is basically not just a universal language, but definitely a way to get out of difficult life situations. There's one topic that I would lastly definitely touch, because I think this is something that you're also an expert in it, safeguarding.
Yes. Safeguarding
of women's category, but also safeguarding in a way of young athletes. Because I'm coming from gymnastics, which is, as you can see, from the last couple of years, a very problematic sport from the perspective that coaches are working with youngsters, sometimes even kids, children. And to become an Olympic champion, which of course all youngsters would like to become, that takes discipline. You must know it coming from your military background also. And sometimes there are points, when it's a very fine line from a coach's perspective, how I can push my gymnast, my athlete forward, but not overlapping on that very fine line, and to keep that healthy distance. We had very sad cases. I don't want to mention Larry Nassar's case, but we all know about what happened in the United States gymnastics. But unfortunately, from other continents, this problem is arising, and not just in the sport.
Yes.
So what is your view on that? How we can sort of redefine you know, the way of relating to youngsters from the coaching perspective?
Well, thank you for asking that question. I've been involved in safeguarding, particularly from the Olympic movement, now for over a decade. You might not know this, but I'm on the Gymnastics Ethics Foundation.
Actually, I know it,
okay,
because
you do know that. Okay,
yes,
so you know that,
I met some cases.
yes,
before
so you know the
yeah.
work we're trying to do there. At the end of the day, when we look at the question of integrity,
Yes,
no parent is going to allow their children to participate in sports if they don't feel it's a safe environment for them to be in. So we have to build that credibility.
that's trust.
And we have to build that trust that people have that it is going to be as much as we can as safe as possible. We have to keep in mind that the issue that impacts on safeguarding, abuse, harassment, this is a societal problem. It's not specifically limited to sports.
That's right.
But then if we recognize that, we need to understand that this happens in all cultures, in all parts of the world. And so what the IOC has been looking to do is to develop a global response for it. A lot of it has to do with education. A lot of it has to make sure that people have processes and procedures in place that would protect athletes. And also, we're now looking to go beyond that, which is how do we deal with remedial cases, which is how do we provide support where we have failed to prevent accident or incidents from happening, to provide the necessary support to the athletes to
back them up in a way.
And so we're looking at those. It's a challenge, as you might understand. I've told the EB when I had presented where we were on safeguarding, and said I'd rather under-promise and over-deliver than over-promise and under-deliver.
That's absolutely
because a lot of it has to do with, as you said, the word trust.
Exactly.
If people trust the system will protect them, if people trust the system will defend them, then they're likely to come forward. If they see that if they come forward with an issue, that they get victimized again, and they get put under pressure, they get accused of all sorts of things, this is not what we want to do. Eventually people are not going to come forward. And we're going to say, oh, we've solved the problem. Nobody's complaining anymore. We haven't. The remedy has to be better. I mean, the cure has to be better than the illness. But if people, and I think this is where we need to build the trust. That's why from an IOC perspective, we haven't been rushing to try and do it, because I'd prefer to build a system, and we're looking at 2 pilot hubs. If that system proves to be successful, then we can look at expanding it to the rest of the world. And I wanted to do that as a pilot program, because if I get it wrong, I can have a chance to fix it.
Yes.
If I get it wrong globally,
yes,
it's just going to push this under the surface, but the problem is still going to exist. So we need to find realistic ways of being able to address these issues. And that's something that I've been intimately involved with. I'm both with the working group and now the chair of the steering committee, which involves more than just sports. It's working with NGOs, working with international agencies to look at how we can better coordinate the activity to protect our children and protect their future. And if we have failed to protect them, at least support them in remedial action.
I think this is absolutely a key factor to not just involve, but to have and keep children and youngsters within the Olympic movement. So thank you for that contribution and for that effort. And we all hope that pilot program will turn out very successful, because I think this is something that is absolutely crucial in the future of Olympic movement.
We want to make sure we get it right and that it actually addresses the problems. And we want to learn from each so that we can eventually roll out a global program that is successful and proven. And if people see that we've got it right and it's working, then their confidence and their trust in the system will be there.
That's the most difficult to build. But if once you succeed, then it's going to be.
That's what we need. We need trust, and that's what we need to work on.
Thank you for that effort. Thank you so much for the interview. I really appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.